What is up, everyone? Some very interesting news today. But before we get into the subject of the video, I just want to say sorry that content uploads have slowed down drastically. Content creation just was not paying the bills, partially because YouTube shadow bans all of our channels. So we sincerely appreciate all the support you give us, but for now, I just had to go get a day job. Hopefully one day we get to a point here at Team Adventurers where content creation pays the bills. I'd rather scrape by doing content creation than live comfortably doing a day job, because content creation is what I love and it's what I need to be doing. It's more important. So your continued support is immensely appreciated. Like, share, subscribe, all the things. We have merch and books that we sell. We're authors. We got a merch store. Come support us on Twitch where you can share bits and donate and all that kind of stuff. And if nothing else, just hit that sub button. It helps us out a lot. We sincerely appreciate it. Now let's get to the story, shall we? And this is something that I've been kind of expecting for a real long time. I've been saying for a while now that Tulsi Gabbard was the last sane Democrat. And now there just are no sane ones left because Tulsi Gabbard is leaving the Democrat Party. There's a video attached to this tweet, but I'm going to read the tweet before we get into it. I can no longer remain in today's Democrat Party that is under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by radicalizing every issue and stroke, same thing in this context, anti-white racism. Actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms. Who divided you? So, let's get into the video, and then we'll probably do some browsing through the comments too.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist...
1 second. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure that I'm actually okay. I'm actually broadcasting the screen properly. There you go.
Ball of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms.
Guess I should have watched the video first,
in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality.
Preach.
Who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
Based.
Who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents.
Based.
And above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war.
True.
Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Amen.
Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead,
Facts.
It stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite.
Facts.
Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
And every person who considers themselves to be morally good should make a video like this. Let's get a fucking hashtag going. Ditch Democrats. Ditch woke, end wokeism, whatever you want to be, whatever the hashtag you want to be. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to go on a little fucking spiel here before we look at the comments, that the modern Democrat Party supports things that are objectively evil. Children, by definition, cannot consent to anything, really. They have to learn what consent is. They have to learn how the world works. They have to learn what bodily autonomy really means. They have to gain a true functional understanding of what consent actually means before they can consent to things. That's why the age of consent is 18 most places, 16 some places, should be 18 all places, in my opinion. Or 21 would be better. Same for voting. And Democrats say, oh, it's perfectly okay to put kids on cross-sex hormones. Totally won't completely destroy them, stunt their growth, cause cancer, even though we know it does in adults for a fact. We can put kids on Lupron. It's not going to chemically sterilize them like it does the adults who are put on it. It's totally fine. We can chop off their breasts, which increases their likelihood of chemical imbalances, causes long-term mental distress when they inevitably detransition and realize they've made a terrible mistake. Mutilate their genitals, which often causes prolonged or just constant urinary tract infections, other structural issues, numbness. We could do these things to kids who have no idea what they're signing up for. It's okay. It's all right. That's what the modern Democrat Party stands for. And there's a slew of other things like taking your guns, which is immoral because you have a right to defend yourself. And if you're against someone with a gun, you need a gun to defend yourself. Therefore, you need a gun to defend yourself. And there's just a slew of other things. There really is. I could just go on and on. Democrats support evil. They've supported evil for a long time. And it's just getting more and more and more overt as time passes. Tulsi should have done this a decade ago. I understand why she didn't. She's someone who probably has a sense of loyalty to the people that she's been with for a certain amount of time. She's someone who wants to stand by her morals and principles, and the classic conservative movement does not support all of her morals and principles. But neither does the Democrat Party anymore. So, if you're someone who's against evil, or is just against big daddy government telling you how to live your life in every way, shape, and form, you're precluded from being in the Democrat Party. You're precluded from voting for someone with a D next to their name. Let's look at the comments. From Tulsi, she's continuing to explain. Click to watch my full statement on why I'm leaving the Democrat Party. I was unaware. Oh, damn, there's a 28-minute video on this. I think, you know what? We'll go look at that after we look at some of the comments. What took you so long? Facts, Tim. She believes in UBI, wants to impose environmental on her and is gun grabber. She is not a conservative, never will be. Don't let her drag you to the left. I mean, I don't understand why this guy is saying all that crap when Tim didn't dispute that. This is something I don't like about people on Twitter. And in fact, people in general. Tim just said, what took you so long, which is a perfectly reasonable question. And this guy just comes out with a bunch of like unrelated shit. You can have interest in all this stuff in this comment and still be like, yeah, I can't be part of the Democrat Party. It's a non sequitur. I hate non sequiturs. They piss me off. We all knew this was coming since 2020. Did I miss this part of the announcement? I left in 2016 after voting Dem my whole life and for Obama twice. I still voted Dem again for you in 2020, but can't imagine anyone with any integrity running on that ticket anymore. It's a party of racism, child abuse, and plain evil. Congrats on taking this step. 100%. No, damn it. Finally, a common sense pro-American Democrat who is brave enough to walk away. Facts. No one does what she does and changes. Nice try. Oh my god. I fucking hate people like this. Just constant fucking skeptics that you can never take yes for an answer. You get a huge win on the board. You know, someone with the platform and the influence that Tulsi has admits that the Democrat Party is a toxic cesspool that she can't be a part of anymore, and your first response is to poo-poo it and question it. So she made a triangle symbol. Oh yeah, New World Order confirmed. Jesus Christ, people. You and Tubaville should be dog whistling should do a dog whistling contest to fundraise for ours. Can sponsor it. Do it on the Capitol steps where Trumpists beat the brakes off a bunch of cops. Oh my god. Me and him must have watched different videos. DeSantis can fly in immigrants to watch. Excuse me, illegal migrants to watch. Winner gets Obama's Kenyan certificate for Dude, these people are unhinged. They really are just fucking unhinged. That a man was hanging in a cage on public display along Ron Paul's midnight ride route. He was executed for poisoning who sold his child. His body was still hanging 20 years later. Today's a good day to share that a man's decomposed body was hanging in a cage on public display along Paul Revere's midnight ride route. He was executed in 1755 for poisoning the man who sold his child. His body was still hanging 20 years later. How the fuck is that relevant to anything in this thread? These people are unhinged and determined to make everything about the sins of the past, because they're incapable of living in the future. Or the present, for that matter, which is where you should be living. Great. The Republican Party welcomes you with open arms. I don't know about that, Ethan. However you say your name. Don't know about welcome, unless she reverses on guns and some other shit. I'm not sure she's welcome in the Republican Party, but I'm definitely glad she's denouncing Democrats. That's enough for me. Follow common sense to join me, Lee. I'm about 4 years ahead of you. As you should be. The party was a member for 30 years, left me behind. It left all normal people with a working class sensibility behind. The union bosses have stayed with the union workers left a long time ago. Exactly. And that's because the union bosses are beholden to the party. Dissolve unions, by the way. Every single one of them, especially the teachers and police unions. I think you have been part of the White Christian Nationalist Party, formerly known as the Republican Party, for quite some time now. Jesus Christ. Oh, I gotta find a new filler phrase. I doubt many in America thought you as being part of the Democrat. These people. I thought self-identity was allowed. I thought you were always allowed to self-identify however you wanted, Andrew. This fucking quack right here, Brooklyn Dad, is such a piece of shit. People think we are upset that she left. She is a Russian stooge, just like the rest of Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian stooge, folks. Oh my god. Oh, yeah, there you go. The walk away movement, which was huge. I think that was huge when Trump was running. Thank you, Kate. Ditch Democrats. The guy could have easily said, hey, she still supports all those things, so we need to let her prove herself before we trust her. Exactly, which would have been a much more reasonable comment. Instead of saying, exactly, it's only okay to self-identify when they do it. It's okay when we do it. I love you, Kate. Let's go look at Tulsi's full video here. Can't remember if I'm subscribed to her channel. Wow. She only has 16K subs, huh?
Aloha. Thank you so much for joining me today on the very first show that we're putting out. There's nothing more precious that we have to give to one another than time. And so I just want to let you know, I appreciate that you are taking some time out of your day to spend with me here on the Tulsi Gabbard Show. We got a lot to talk about today. We got a lot to talk about in the coming weeks. I will be sharing my perspective on a whole host of topics and issues. And I really look forward to sharing some interesting conversations with you, with people who I know very well as those who I may be meeting for the first time, but who have an interesting perspective on challenges we face, on opportunities that we have ahead of us. I think you'll like what we have to share. Today, I want to share something with you that has been on my mind and has been troubling me for quite some time and has now compelled me to take action. Now, I love our country. Our God-given rights of freedom, life, and liberty that are enshrined in our Constitution and Bill of Rights are what inspires me. Now, I answered the call to duty. I took an oath dedicating my life to supporting and defending those freedoms, both in uniform and in public office. I had the good fortune of growing up here in Hawaii. And growing up here gave me a very special appreciation for the importance of our environment, protecting our water, protecting our natural resources. And, I used to go and do beach cleanups as a kid and do other things trying to protect our home, but I always felt like I needed to do more. And so when I was 21 years old, I decided to run for Hawaii State House so that I could actually be in a position to do that, to protect the environment. I'd never had any.
Here's the thing about people that feel the need to do more. If we as a society could agree that everyone just needs to do a little, then no one would have to do a lot when it comes to things like protecting the environment. If we really as a culture began shitting all over people who litter, if we really as a culture began shitting all over people who were abhorrently wasteful in multiple ways, if we really as a culture began looking down on people who live in ultra excess as status symbols. I don't want the government to crack down on those things. We as a culture should look down on those things, because living in ultra excess is just a display of vanity. It's hedonism, and I don't respect it. And I think it's largely bad for society in many ways. A little bit of excess is fine. I'm talking about people with, like, it's them and their husband and they live in a $1 billion mega mansion. Like, you really need all that? Really? So if we as a culture actually cared about the environment, it wouldn't be an issue.
Interest in running for office. Before that, I was not politically affiliated, but as I was filling out the paperwork to go and file my election papers, I had to choose which box I would check. I had to choose which party I would affiliate with.
And just to be clear, because I've thought about it, that statement might sound like I'm accusing Tulsi of that. I don't know what kind of mansion or how she lives is. That wasn't directed at her. I was making a broad statement about the ultra wealthy, just so that's clear.
So before doing that, I thought I need to do my research. And I did that. And as I read more and learned more, I was inspired by Democrats who stood up against the war in Vietnam. I was inspired by those who here in Hawaii fought for plantation workers who were being abused and exploited by wealthy landowners, but had nobody to stand up for them and be their voice. I was inspired by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. I was drawn to the ideals of a big tent, inclusive Democratic Party that stood up for working men and women, that stood up for the little guy. Now, in contrast, as I read about the Republican Party at that time, it seemed like it was a party that stood for the interests of big business and warmongering elites. So I became a Democrat and remained one for the last 20 years. Yes, an independent Democrat, to be sure, but a Democrat nonetheless. I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party. It's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue.
Cowardly and evil wokeness. You can't leave out the evil part there. Remember the kid butchery. Can't forget about the kid butchery. Kind of chief among the issues, the kid butchery, in my opinion.
And stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms enshrined in our Constitution, and who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police, who protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, these are some of the main reasons I'm leaving the Democratic Party, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them here with you today. But these are really important issues. And in the coming weeks, I hope you'll join me because I'm going to be going into each and every one of these in more depth. Now, the pro-war Democratic Party of today has led us to the brink of nuclear war. This party is led by warmongers who are firmly in the grips of the military-industrial complex and don't know or don't care about the cost of war or who pays the price.
Has led us to
President
the brink
Biden
of
and
war.
Democratic Party
elites led by
have pushed us to the precipice of nuclear war, risking starting World War III and destroying the world as we know it. This is the most urgent existential threat that we face. I ran for president in 2020 because I knew that this is where we were headed. All the signs were there. I raised this issue every single day during the campaign. And
that's true. I watched quite a bit of her campaign videos. I followed her somewhat closely during the campaign, and she made the issue of geopolitics and how tensions around the world were heating up a pretty big issue. And so that's why it's especially frustrating when I go through that Twitter thread where she posted a short version of this video and you see idiots calling her a pro-Putin stooge. It's like, dude, either you're a bot or you are completely brainwashed. Because no real sane person says that Tulsi Gabbard is a Putin stooge. That's like the most smooth brain take you could ever have.
on the national debate stage, for those of you who may have come to a town hall or who were watching, I'm sure you noticed. But the politicians and the media completely ignored it. They didn't care then, and they don't care now. Now, obviously, I didn't win that election, so I don't have the power to do what is necessary to prevent it. President Biden and Congress do, but they very irresponsibly are refusing to use that power to protect the safety of our country, the American people, and the world from the devastation that a nuclear holocaust would bring. So to protect our loved ones, to protect our children and our world, I'm calling on every one of you, every American, to join me in standing up to these cowardly politicians now. This may be our last chance to do so. Today's Democratic Party rejects the rule of law. What does that mean? The people's trust, our trust in the rule of law, is the foundation of our democracy. And by weaponizing the security state and federal law enforcement,
it's like what we watched on Tim earlier today. He was showing what all those people were saying about law. And yeah, that's a very good point that Caitlin just made. So earlier, before this video, I was watching something from Timcast, and he was pointing out that a bunch of the blue check marks piled on Lauren Boebert for saying that, for the tweet mocking President Joe Biden's I got 2 words for you, make manufacture in America, or, whatever it was. Biden said 2 words, and I got 2 words for you, and then he said 3 words. Lauren Boebert made a tweet mocking him. Blue check marks piled on Lauren because they're unaware that their guy is a senile dementia patient that can't fucking count. Oh, God. 2 words, made in America. Yes, thank you, Caitlin. Classic Biden. 2 words, made in America. Classic Biden. And yeah, it really is. Well, and it's because they're in a cult. It really is because they're in a cult. They don't read the news. They don't absorb any information that's not from the shit spigot that is mainstream media.
for their own partisan political ambitions, Democrat leaders are undermining the rule of law and turning our democracy into a banana republic. Across the country, we see a lot of examples of this. We see Democrat politicians calling for defunding the police, demonizing the police, and enacting laws that favor criminals' rights over those of everyday Americans.
Which is something that has been going on for a long time. We live in a society where a criminal can victimize the fuck out of someone in various ways, and then the person who is victimized fights back during the crime happening, and the criminal gets injured by the person fighting back against being assaulted or raped or having their house broken into, and the criminal sues for damages and wins. How is that even remotely acceptable? But that's been going on for 2 decades now. And it ain't Republicans doing that shit.
Called progressive DAs, district attorneys that let violent criminals out of jail, refusing to charge them, even though many have been arrested 30, 40, or even 50 times.
Thanks, Soros, you piece of shit Nazi.
So is it any surprise, really, that crime and murder rates are rapidly increasing? That people don't feel safe walking down the street in their own neighborhoods? Don't feel safe allowing their kids to walk to school? Is it any surprise that firearm purchases for self-defense have skyrocketed over the last couple of years? Now, under the Obama administration, the IRS was used to target conservative groups. Mm-hmm. Now, Biden's Department of Justice recently indicted 11 pro-life activists for organizing an event blockading an abortion clinic. That's what they were charged with. They didn't use physical force. They weren't dangerous. But 7 of those 11, they're facing 11 years in prison and fines of $250,000. I'm going to say that again. 7 of these pro-life protesters are facing 11 years in prison and fines of $250,000. The Biden Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security have focused their newly formed domestic terror unit to target parents who are vocally standing in opposition to radical curriculums and...
Like that girl that started a GoFundMe because she was being sued by her rapist. Exactly. And the court said she was obligated to pay. Exactly. And look, if someone, comes down the tube later, finds this video, and is like, well, actually, this law was put in place by Republicans, and this law had bipartisan support, and these laws are somewhat responsible for this. Okay, fine. Vote them out. Vote them out and try them for treason. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Any law that allows someone who raped you to sue you for custody of the resulting child or damages of any kind or whatever, that is an immoral law by definition. So, yeah.
Explicit sexual content being taught to their kids in public schools.
Yeah.
The Biden administration is labeling these parents as terrorists just for showing up at school board meetings and demanding change.
For exercising their constitutional rights in their representative republic. You know, it's crazy. Across the internet, the definition of fascism has been changed to include the phrase right-wing system of government. But before about 2010, the definition made no mention of left or right, because fascism is not inherently right-wing. In fact, it's actually inherently left-wing. All of the worst authoritarians throughout history have been left-leaning. They wanted to centralize government control. They wanted to increase the government's hold over individuals. They wanted to have absolute control of the economy, trade, things like that. That's not right-wing. That's the opposite of free market capitalism, conservatism. Biden is a fascist.
President Biden campaigned on a message of unity, healing the partisan divide, bringing the country together.
Which was a lie.
He just gave a big speech saying that supporters of President Trump are the most extremist group in our country and a threat to our democracy.
We covered that speech, live stream here on the channel.
You got Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris.
Got great numbers.
They are proclaiming that the Supreme Court is illegitimate just because they disagree with its rulings. They're undermining the legitimacy of the Supreme Court given their position of power in making these statements.
And they're desperate to pack the court because they're tired of having their shitty things that they try to fight for get shot down in the Supreme Court, so they want to pack it. Oh, man. Crazy how every time you lose, you want to change the rules like a bunch of spoiled children.
We've got the Biden administration that stood by and did absolutely nothing as activists protested outside the homes of Supreme Court justices during all hours of the day and night in clear violation of federal law.
In clear violation of federal law, exactly.
Now go back and look again. How did the Biden administration treat those pro-life, non-violent protesters?
Which didn't even break a law because forming a non-violent blockade outside of a business on public sidewalk is not against the law. That's First Amendment. That's political speech. That's protest. That's protected. So the fact that, like, again, you could not demonstrate more clearly how much of a fucking fascist Biden is than with that comparison right there. You can violently protest. Well, I won't say. Well, I will say violently because a dude literally was going to, I think it was Kavanaugh's house, to assassinate him. So yeah, you can violently protest outside of a Supreme Court justice's house over legitimate functions inside the court, and you can't protest baby murder without getting locked up in a federal prison. Yeah, we're living in a fascist dictatorship at this point. We really are.
And look at how they treated those who were protesting outside the homes, their families and children of these Supreme Court justices live. When the party in power does not believe in the rule of law, but they're responsible for writing and enforcing laws, our democracy is doomed.
Right.
Today's Democratic Party does not believe in our constitutionally protected right to free speech.
Or the
Fostering
Second
diversity
Amendment,
of thought
which
and
is
freedom
just
of
as
expression
important.
is the very foundation of any flourishing democracy. Democratic Party leaders don't agree. They are led by fanatical ideologues who pose a threat to our democracy because they don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't
I have real dictionaries.
believe in freedom of thought, freedom of religion.
You should, Caitlin, you should take a picture of your real dictionary and what it says about fascism, and we should have that, just queued up anytime anyone talks about, fascism being right wing. It's like, look, the definition was changed by you people to fit your narrative. What you're saying is a lie.
Religion. Because of that, they try to censor speech that they don't like, labeling it as, hey, this is misinformation, this is hate speech, this is violent speech. And they are working hand in glove.
Also, go to that entry in the dictionary and type out the exact definition as it appears in your dictionary in the comments right now. I'm curious what it says.
With corporate for-profit media and big tech to smear and silence political opponents and anyone who dares to challenge their authority, their narrative, and therefore exposing their insecurities. Not too long ago, the Biden administration even tried launching their own Ministry of Truth with the objective of controlling what information we are allowed to read, hear, and say. They will determine what is misinformation, what is true, and what is not. Now, their ideology is one of hate and divisiveness rather than respect and love, aloha. And they stand diametrically opposed to
It's funny how Caitlin typed the first section. No, it did not show up, Caitlin. Thankfully, I have the power of StreamYard here. So, hey everyone, YouTube tried to censor this comment right here. A governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc. Huh. It's crazy how there's no mention of right-wing anything in there, but that's exactly what has to happen under communism, socialism, and just about any other highly left-wing system of government. They take control of the private sector. They don't allow for dissent. They quell speech that goes against them by any means necessary. Yeah, that sounds awful Nazi to me. That sounds awful socialist to me, which is inherently left-wing. Crazy how that works. I'm just going to leave that definition of fascism up there.
traditional liberalism, which recognizes the basic goodness of people and the autonomy of the individual.
And hey, Caitlin, send a picture of that definition to me, and send it to me in Messenger so I can put it up on screen.
Supporting civil liberties, supporting a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now tell me, how can a political party that is opposed to freedom be trusted with our democracy and our God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution?
Our representative republic, by the way, Tulsi.
They can't be. Today's Democratic Party does not believe in our constitutionally protected right to freedom of religion. Now, the Constitution recognizes that our freedom comes from God, not the government, not any government. Unfortunately, Democratic Party leaders reject this truth and are hostile toward people of faith and spirituality and actively try to undermine our religious freedom. Now, during the 2020 Democratic National Convention, they chose to omit the words "under God" from our Pledge of Allegiance. We've seen over years how high-profile Democratic leaders openly mock or discriminate against people of faith, especially Christians. And President Obama once ridiculed Americans for clinging to their guns and religion. Vice President Kamala Harris, back when she was a U.S. Senator in 2018, she remarked that being a member of the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic charity organization, a nonprofit, disqualified Brian Boucher from serving as a federal judge. Senator Dianne Feinstein derided now Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who happens to be a devout Catholic, during her Senate confirmation hearing, stating, quote, "The dogma lives loudly within you." Now let's remember the Constitution. Article 6, Section...
I'm much more comfortable having a conversation and dealing politically with a dogmatic Catholic than I am someone who's dogmatic in the woke cult, because at least a dogmatic Catholic doesn't tell me that it's moral to butcher kids. Crazy how that works.
3 says, and I quote, "No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States." How is it that the Democratic Party of today doesn't seem to know this? That the Democratic Party of today has forgotten that freedom of religion does not mean freedom from religion.
Right.
Our government must respect every American's deeply personal relationship with God and our freedom to express that and practice that faith without fear of state-sponsored reprisal or punishment, censorship, or discrimination.
Furthermore, I believe it is important that we as a society return to an acknowledgement that the Western values that our society was founded on are Christian, Judeo-Christian in origin. A lot of atheists like to use this line, "I don't need God to tell me not to kill people." Yes, you do. Because before Christianity came around and started telling people that was bad, there were a lot of societies where honor killings were a thing, where murder had slim to no punishment, especially if you were well-connected. People have no idea what life was like on this planet for the average human before Christianity. We absolutely need God to remind us not to be pieces of shit. Christianity and Judaism are proof of that. Islam's proof of that. Look at how bad Islam is. Come on, man. You think God told Muhammad all that shit? No, that was a demon. So, no, you absolutely, absolutely need religion to have any grounded morality. I'm going to put this thing of a picture of the actual definition of fascism up here on screen, because I think it's too important not to in this day and age. Oh, come on, Facebook, stop being a dick. Fascism. Oh, so this is actually a screen grab from a currently live site. Sometimes initial capital letter. A governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism. The philosophy, principles, or methods of fascism, a political movement that employs the principles and methods of fascism, especially the one established by Mussolini and others like him in the early 1900s. So there you have it, folks. That is the real definition of really. What the fuck? Okay, whatever.
Now, whether you believe in God or not isn't the point here. The point is that any political party that is trying to erase the presence of God from every facet of public life and is hostile towards those who choose to worship God cannot be trusted to protect our inalienable God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution, and therefore should not be in power. Today's Democratic Party does not believe in our constitutionally protected right to bear arms. Now, our founders passed the Second Amendment out of a recognition that every one of us as Americans has a right to defend ourselves and our loved ones, and to serve as a check on a tyrannical government seeking to take away our God-given freedoms. The Democratic Party's hatred of the Second Amendment and their increasing authoritarian instincts poses a serious threat to our freedoms. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47, said Beto O'Rourke at a debate when he was running for president. That's just one example.
Yeah. Good old Beto. I can't stand that piece of shit.
Of many that display this hatred for the Second Amendment by leading Democrats in this country. Our founders intentionally passed the Second Amendment right after the First Amendment.
Yep.
The majority ruling from the recent Supreme Court striking down New York's law that barred people from concealed carry firearms really summarized clearly why Democrats are so wrong to try to take away our Second Amendment rights. Yep. And I want to read this statement from that ruling because it really says it so clearly. Just as we do not need to seek a permit to stand on the street corner and exercise our right to free speech, we shouldn't have to seek permission for a law-abiding citizen to carry a firearm. We as a society don't get to pick and choose which of our rights in the Constitution are more worthy of protecting than another. End of quote. So protecting our freedom to defend ourselves and those we love, and protecting our rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution against a tyrannical power is exactly why we must ensure that our right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, today's Democratic Party is Big Brother undermining our civil liberties.
And I would like to remind people, because there's a lot of people that insist that the Second Amendment only applies to muskets, such a smooth brain take, that during the time where the Second Amendment was written, we had cannons, we had primitive grenades, we had these things called puckle guns, which is a low-tech repeating firearm. Some have argued that it's the first machine gun by a strict definition. I think that was Caitlin sending a photo of her dictionary, her written dictionary. Haha! Yes. You can always trust a book to not lie to you. Well, excuse me, not always. But I would trust a book over the internet any day. A political group, a club, a bundle, the principles of the fascisti, also the fascist movement in Italy and a similar movement elsewhere. A member of the fascisti, of pertaining to, sponsored, embodying the principles of the fascisti. As a meaning bearer of the faith, because the fascists are supposed to typify obedience to the law as did the Lictators in ancient Rome, an Italian organization originated by patriots to oppose all the radical elections in the country under Benito Mussolini. It became identical with the government of the state, which is reorganized, embodying many of the syndicalist, I can't say that word right now, principles, hence everywhere elsewhere, as in the German Britain. See, this definition has problems because it kind of dances around what the thing is by pointing to a thing that you have to have historical context about. But this is still better than, the current Webster's dictionary definition of a right-wing system of government that focuses on good, which is a lie. This is definitely better than that. Any fascism definition that includes the terms right-wing is a bad definition by default.
The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution ensures, quote, the right of the American people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures, end of quote. Democratic elite party leaders have had many opportunities to uphold our Fourth Amendment rights, to get rid of unconstitutional provisions of the Patriot Act.
Abolish the Patriot Act, abolish civil asset forfeiture, strengthen laws protecting us from invasions of privacy by big tech.
That violate our civil liberties. When I was in Congress, I introduced legislation that would repeal the Patriot Act and address the dangerous secret FISA courts being used to undermine our civil liberties, especially those protected by the Fourth Amendment. You wouldn't be surprised to know that Democratic Party leaders didn't move my bill forward, even allowing it for a vote. Because every time they've had the opportunity, they choose to side with the security state instead of siding with our liberty, our freedom. And we see a lot of examples of this, whether it's using the IRS to snoop into our bank accounts because we sent someone over $600 on Venmo or the Cash App, or supporting the corrupt system of civil asset forfeiture to seize property from law-abiding Americans who've not even been charged with a crime. And if you're one of those people, good luck getting your money or your property back without suing the government. Or most recently, getting credit card companies to keep track of any and all firearm and ammunition-related purchases. The Democratic Party stands over and over again with giving Big Brother.
And I would once again like to thank MasterCard for not participating in that. I intend to very soon get a MasterCard credit card. And anytime I have to use credit, it will be on that card. Until the entire credit industry comes out and says, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. It's anti-American.
More power and control over our lives. This stands diametrically opposed to our Constitution and the vision that our founders had for us. Today's Democratic Party racializes everything and blatantly foments anti-white racism. The Democratic machine has betrayed Dr. Martin Luther King's dream, his dream of a nation where we are judged based on the content of our character rather than the color of our skin. And in their blind pursuit of power, Democrat leaders have reduced each of us as God's children to the color of our skin, using identity politics to tear us apart, all so they can win a few votes, also they can gain more political power. Democrats were completely silent in the face of Mayor Lori Lightfoot's blatant racist policy of only accepting interviews with reporters of color because she was struck with the, quote, overwhelming whiteness and maleness. Modern day segregation in schools is being promoted by racial profiteers like Robin DiAngelo and the corrupt, self-identified cultural Marxists who lead Black Lives Matter. Where's the Democratic Party of today stand on that? Well, they embrace these people and their ideology and celebrate their racist agenda. They support programs that are teaching our kids in public schools that they are either the privileged or the victims, the oppressors or the oppressed, solely because of the color of their skin.
Yep.
They have become
Facts.
the racists that they claim to hate. Today's Democratic Party is anti-woman.
Oh, God, that's the truth.
There's no greater expression of hatred and hostility towards women than to erase the existence of women as a category of people.
Facts.
Now, if you've been paying attention, the Democratic Party has always claimed to be the champions for women, to stand proudly for the passage and enactment of Title IX, making history, leveling the playing field for women and girls. But if you listen to them lately and you look at what they're doing, the Biden administration and today's Democratic Party are spitting in the face of these achievements by rejecting the objective truth and reality that women exist and are not just a construct in someone's mind.
Right.
They can no longer even define what a woman is.
Right.
They're demanding that we replace words like mother with birthing person,
which is demeaning as hell.
Just to please.
The term birthing person reduces women to cattle. It is inherently misogynistic and offensive. It is disgusting at every level. Cannot express that enough.
Biological men who claim to be women at any given moment. They're taking away opportunities and futures from girls in sports by allowing transgender athletes who until recently identified as men and who clearly have a biological advantage of being a man to compete against women. Now, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, the Biden administration is quietly trying to change Title IX through a backdoor rule change that would actually remove women and biological sex from the Title IX statute. Now, if you remember, Title IX was passed specifically out of a recognition of the difference.
Now is as good of a time as any, by the way, to remind you that in the entirety of gender theory, modern gender ideology, a lot of the LGBTQ ideology came from two pedophiles, John Money and Kinsley, both of which did really pedophilic shit. Like, a lot of it. Just saying.
In the biological sex between men and women. And by recognizing that difference in the biological sex, providing opportunities and fairness and a level playing field for women and girls. The Biden administration's action now to take away women and biological sex from that definition of Title IX is absolutely taking away opportunities for millions of young girls and women across the country. They're even now going so far as to claim that it is sexual harassment to address someone by the wrong pronouns. So if you look at all their actions, really what they're trying to do is to force us to comply.
Sexual harassment is a criminal offense. You see what they're doing? They're trying to make your speech of objective reality criminal in nature because they hate objective reality and they hate your right to free speech. Okay, Caitlin just sent me the second part of the definition of fascism, which actually includes the whole thing. The actual definition of what it is without just referring to the party in Italy. So there you are on screen. I'm not going to leave it up too long because I want to get to the rest of Tulsi's video, but there it is. That is the actual definition of fascism right there. Headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Does that sound a lot like conservatives who constantly talk about the importance of free speech and the importance of having the right to defend yourself from the government? No, that sounds like the exact opposite of conservatism. Because fascism is left-wing.
They're trying to force us to comply with this literal insanity by trying to regulate our speech and thought with the threat of punishment if we don't comply. By denying that there are biological differences between men and women, they're erasing women and denying the existence of objective truth. This is really the bigger issue here.
And erasing men. I feel like that's a point that gets talked over a lot, and I won't stand for it. They're erasing men too. They're trying to homogenize humans as a whole. And let me fucking tell you, I abhor that. Just as no man can cut his dick off or get fake tits or hormones or whatever he does, usually just put on a wig and shitty makeup and call himself a woman because he has no idea what it's actually like to be a woman cannot take testosterone, and chop her tits off and call herself a man. She has no idea what it's like to be a man. And they never will.
Because if one denies the existence of truth, then there are no boundaries. There are no limits in our society. And really what happens then is the truth becomes whatever those in power want it to be. And that's exactly what we are seeing happen in our society, in this country today. Today's Democratic Party is undermining families. Now, families are the bedrock of civilization. Today's Democratic Party does not recognize this truth and the importance of the central foundational role that families play in our society and civilization. And because they don't recognize this truth, they want to strip away the rights of parents to raise their kids, claiming, hey, we in the government know what's better for you and your children and your family better than you do. Former Democratic governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, said last year, there is no role for parents in determining a school's curriculum. You don't get a say. The largest teachers union in the country and one of the Democratic Party's biggest donors, the National Education Association, recently passed a resolution that endorses the teaching of critical race theory in classrooms across the country.
Abolish the unions. Every one of them. The rail union, the police union, the fucking union that runs Safeway. Abolish them all. But especially, most importantly, firstly, the teachers and police unions.
Public school districts are implementing policies that sexualize kids as young as 5 or 6 years old. Taxpayer dollars are being used to bring in drag strippers and encourage gender transition surgery in minors, all kept secret from their parents. Teachers not being allowed to talk to parents about what's going on with their children at school. We have the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Rachel Levine saying young children should be empowered to get gender affirmation treatment, which often involves puberty blockers, chemical castration, and irreversible surgeries that cause long-term harm to kids. Now, here's the thing. If parents don't comply...
Not long-term, lifetime harm to kids. All their time telling you how stupid you are, that you can't possibly know what is good for you. Exactly. Literally, they do. They spend 100%. That is what the Democrat does. And YouTube censored this comment, so I'm going to leave this up. That, of course YouTube censored that comment. Hey, YouTube, go fuck yourselves.
The federal government threatens to bring in child protective services, get them involved, and take your kids away. Families are the foundation of civilization and our society. And today's Democratic Party's policies are very quickly eroding that foundation to the detriment of us all. I've said a lot of things here today. I've briefly outlined many of the serious challenges and problems that we're facing. And I'm going to be going into more depth on each of these because they deserve that time and attention as we go forward in the coming weeks. But as we end our show today, I don't want to leave you feeling hopeless. Let's remember the vision that our founders had for this country, the ideals they set forth. I believe in a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, they stand for a government of, by, and for the powerful elite. So as we remember the ideals our founders laid out for us, let's draw inspiration from their hopes for us, their hopes for this country and our potential. And let's take action to bring about that change in our communities, in our states, and in this country so that we truly have a government that is of, by, and for the people. So today, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in taking action. Join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that this so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking this country, I invite you to join me.
There you go. There you go, folks. They spend all their time. They isolate you by gaslighting. They could possibly have your best interest at heart. Exactly. The modern Democrat Party are experts at gaslighting. They really are. While all the while, they are the ones that are hurting you. Exactly. Because the policies of the modern left are anti-human. They are anti-human at their very roots. They want less humans. They advocate for abortion. They advocate for chemically sterilizing kids. They want to take away your right to express yourself, to say what you want to say. They want to take away your right to defend yourself from others and the government. They want more of your money because they think you can spend your money better than you can. They want to force you to do things you don't want to do, like buy an electric car. They're anti-human. They're anti-individual. Period. So, I'm going to wrap it up here because I got to get to my day job. Once again, if you've made it to the end of this thing, thank you very much. We're available on Twitch. We have a Discord. You can find that Discord in our LINKTREE. We have merch. We have books. For the time being, the content creation here on this channel especially will be slowing down, but we're still really active over on Twitch. We really enjoy live streaming. That's kind of the environment that fits us better. And I'm also looking for an editor, someone to take Twitch streams, chop them up for YouTube. So if you or someone you know does that, have them comment, have them come into the Discord, however you want to get in contact with us. You can also use the email in the About section of the channel. All right. I got to get to work. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you. And welcome to the adventure.